This outfit makes me feel like I'm doing an interview. Hello, this is Sarah with Soiled Plant. Welcome back to my channel. Your eyes do not deceive you. I am actually filming when there is actual daylight out. It's a little mini miracle. I come to you because this very morning I have gone out and bought my first few plants of 2021. So it's my first official plant haul of the year. It's currently winter where I am, and it is not advisable to buy plants over winter, and normally I wouldn't, but there were a couple of circumstances that led me to go to the plant shop and tempt myself. Firstly, I really wanted to get a few smaller plants, and I will show those to you right now. The first reason is I wanted to get a couple of little fairy style plants. I have my little terrarium that I bought a few months ago, and I showed it to you guys in my Indianapolis nursery haul. That was basically the only thing I bought. I didn't end up buying any plants, but I've been meaning to put my 2 jewel orchids into that terrarium, and those jewel orchids would really like to be potted up. They're kind of struggling a little bit being in their sort of temporary potting situation. So I didn't want to pot it up until I had all the plants I wanted, and so I've got 2 more little plants. This one is just a basic little fern. It is actually the first fern I've ever purchased for myself ever. I know that they are very finicky and whatnot, but I'm hoping being in a terrarium will help it and hopefully let it grow and not do too poorly. I also just think ferns are really pretty. I just haven't ever tried them myself yet. The 2 jewel orchids I have, I want to make sure that they're not overwhelmed by the greenery of the other plants, so I wanted kind of filler green plants. And at this particular shop, they didn't have too many just plain green plants. There were a lot that were pink or red or much more flashy, lots of white. And I wanted to make sure I picked green plants. This other one doesn't look fantastic, but it is technically a little itty bitty 2-inch pot of Philodendron Moonlight. I have never had one of these before. I've seen them in person a ton. I've just never ended up buying them, and it doesn't look the best. It was the better of the ones that they had in stock. But like I said, I wanted a green plant in there, and a little Philodendron Moonlight would be super cute next to the orchids and the fern. So hopefully I will be able to pot those up pretty soon, and then those little jewel orchids can finally be in their sort of forever home. Don't mind Maggie's rump in the frame, but yeah, I wanted something green, and their selection was a little low for just plain green plants, and I didn't want to get 2 of the little ferns. I wanted to mix it up a little bit. So I did buy one of these, and hopefully they offset the 2 really nicely. And I think this one will work really well. I hope it doesn't grow too fast, because these things can get really big. We'll see how it does. So that was the first reason I went. The other reason is because this particular greenhouse made a trip down to Florida specifically to get more rare, harder to get a hold of plants, also way more expensive plants. And so I usually try to go when they have these sort of sales. A lot of times they can be extremely overpriced, but sometimes you'll find that the prices are like exactly right, good specimen, everything looks good, so then it's worth picking up. And I knew that they had a couple of my wish list plants coming in, so I wanted to see what prices they had them at, the quality of the plants themselves, and whether or not to pick them up. But it's one of those rare opportunities to be able to go and actually see the plants in person and be able to assess them in person before you buy them, at least plants like this. So I did decide to go with one of my wish list plants from the video I did back in the fall. I'll link it up in the card and down below, but I've managed to check 2 more off of that list. The first one I took off the list is a euphorbia. So euphorbia can come in a ton of different varieties. My particular interest was in the euphorbia that look a lot like cactus, which this clearly does. And I don't own any cactus, I don't own any euphorbia. So this is gonna be a little experiment, I guess. A little risky, but it is so cool. This one in particular is called a dragon bone euphorbia, which I'm sure it has because of how spiny it is and the green and white splotches. I think in I'm pretty sure in that wish list video I mentioned that I liked the ones that were more gray toned and a little more creepy looking. They had a few like that, but this one in particular I was way more drawn to and think it is really kind of special in a lot of ways, and it's a pretty good size for the price I paid, I think anyway. I did confirm with the person at the shop that you do basically treat these style euphorbia exactly like you would a cactus, so don't water it very often and give it a lot of light, basically as much light as you possibly can. Because it has spines, I would like to see if the cats interact with it or not. I hope not. I'm also worried that they will bat at it and get upset at it when it pokes them, like when they put their little faces up there and they get poked in the face. I wonder if they will get upset and bat at it and maybe break off one of these arms. So that's a major concern for me, and I want to make sure I don't have that happen because I know how hard it is to get stuff like this to grow, especially indoors. So I'm going to hopefully be able to put it in my south-facing window right here. I have maybe a few spots that I can fit it. It's a little tall, so I'm gonna have to actually, let me see right now. It'll barely fit under there, so that's good at least. So with this euphorbia, it makes a 3D triangle if you look at it from the top of each of these branches. On each of the edges of the triangle, it has these spines running up and down. And there's also these tiny little leaves at the same point that do eventually kind of dry off and fall off. So down towards the bottom of the euphorbia, it doesn't have those little leaves that are coming out, these little guys right here. But I've noticed as you go down some of these older areas, they are dried out and they fall off. If you kind of like tap them, they fall off. But like I said, this is my first euphorbia. I'm gonna be learning a lot about how they grow, how they do. I just keep staring at it because it's so cool. Let's show you a close-up. Look. But I really like this. I went there knowing they were bringing in some euphorbia, and I saw this one and I'm like, done, gotta have it. So cool. I like the plants that are a little weird looking, and this one definitely qualifies as weird looking. I do plan on putting this one outside in the summertime because I think it definitely needs it. It needs more of that high direct sun that most of the other plants can do without. But this one will definitely need it. So I will make sure in the spring and summer and early fall, this one is outside. That is the Euphorbia Dragon Bones. The next plant I got was definitely a wish list plant. Very happy to have it. I've been scouring the market for one of these for a minute, and they've held their value pretty well. They haven't gone too high up or dropped very much at all in the last 2 years since I've been looking for one. I've basically been looking for a reasonable price, quote unquote reasonable price, and then it being a good specimen and being big enough. I think I finally found that plant today, and that is her right here. This is the Philodendron biliate, biliate, what have you. I call it biliate, and it has 3 gigantic leaves on it that are all at, you know, at least a foot long, doing pretty well, fairly healthy. And I'm just going to show you this angle real fast. Look at those stems. Look at those stems. These are crazy. They are like a corally sort of reddish orange color, and they just are so meaty and just straight up and down, and then can support that entire leaf just with the petiole just like that. So friggin' cool. This plant in particular is very similar to a Philodendron Audubonpoense, which I have, and I love my Audubonpoense, but this one grows a little bit different. It has the orange stems, the leaves look slightly different. The edges are actually the same color orange as the stem, which is very pretty and very cute, and one of these like more subtle things about plants that you don't know until they're in person. Also on the backs of the leaves, you can see the red veins on, or red, orange, whatever, what have you, veins on the back side, but on the front side they look, you know, your normal greeny white color. These babies can definitely get pricey. Because all these leaves are so huge, I'm hoping that it does pretty well and rebounds pretty well. I do not anticipate the next couple leaves coming out being even close to this size. It'll probably take a while to acclimate and recuperate before it even puts off a new leaf, and when it does put off a new leaf, I'm sure it's going to be teeny tiny, but I don't really mind because the leaves that I do have already are just like just perfection. I love them. It's in a fairly small pot here. I'll have to put this in sort of like a heavier cash pot because it is a little top heavy. The leaves and stuff aren't super heavy as it is, but you know, if a gust of wind hits it or like I brush up against it, it's more likely to fall over because it's a little, you know, top heavy. And this one eventually is going to go in my greenhouse with all of my other sort of more special plants, I guess. But also there's really good light in there, so I want to make sure it gets really good light. So that's the real reason I'm putting it in there. The I almost called it the Audubon. See, this is a problem, but the biliate doesn't need an insane amount of humidity like any of the philodendron variety. It'll appreciate more, but you don't need to give it to it. Conditions in my living room would be plenty as far as humidity go for this plant, but I want to make sure it gets plenty of light, and so that's why it's going to be going in the greenhouse as soon as it's out of quarantine. I want to highlight that for all of these plants, I am putting them in quarantine for at least a week, probably more like 2 weeks if I can help it. The greenhouse I got it from basically picked these plants up very, very recently from Florida, so they haven't even been quarantined at the shop. These were basically in Florida a couple of days ago, and now they're here. So they've been through some things, so I'm gonna make sure they do not have bugs. These have been in the house for almost 2 hours, and I've already cleaned from top to bottom. I use a 50-50 alcohol mix with a couple drops of dish soap, and then I use an old makeup brush, and I get in all the nooks and crannies, especially like the joints where there can be certain bugs hiding in the little corners. And I got both sides of the leaf all the way up and down the stems, and I will do that treatment twice, like about a week apart. But I did that to the euphorbia, and I did that to the little nursery plants as well. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that because anytime I bring in new plants, I have to quarantine them. I have gotten so many bugs from different nurseries. I am very cautious when I bring plants into my house because I've gotten so many pests from plants I've brought in from who knows where. So I want to make sure that they do not contaminate the rest of my plants before I put them in with everything else. So that about does it. These two in particular, whoo boy, they are cutie patooties, and I'm excited to have them. These two are both on my wish list and very happy to check them off. I will say when I was there, they did have other plants that are on my wish list that I would have also loved to get. I did not like their prices versus the quality of the plants, so I'll get them eventually. You know, it's only a matter of time, but I definitely want to make sure I get the right plants at the right time for me. And right now these two fit the bill, but the other ones didn't. But eventually, someday, I'll get my hands on all of them. I'll get them one of these days. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. Biliate. Biliate. That's really fun to say.